Hello everyone, namaste, welcome back to my channel. Hi, if you're new here, this is Amisha Singh Chauhan, and if you're looking for something fun, dark and mysterious, then you're the right place. So do not forget to subscribe to my channel and also hit that bell icon so that every time I'm here with a new case to talk about, you'll get to know about it. So before we start with today's case, a short disclaimer that this video is completely for educational purposes and whatever information that I would be giving out today is directly from the internet and I intend no disrespect or harm to any individual. Also, I want to apologize in advance because this case consists a lot of names which are very foreign to me. So I know I'm gonna mess it up and I want to apologize for that in advance. So let's get started with today's case, that is the murder of Anni Dewani. Now, Anni Dewani was 28 years old, Indian origin girl who was born and brought up in a very small town named Mariestad in Sweden. She was at the time working and marketing in a company called Ericsson in Stockholm. Now, she married 30-year-old Shriyan Dewani on 29th of October 2010 in Bombay. Shriyan Dewani, he came from a very rich family. He was basically a millionaire born and brought up in England. Now, his family's business was in pharmacy and they also had chains of nursing homes. If I'm not wrong, it is called PSP Healthcare. So anyways, like I said, they got married on 29th of October 2010. They were dating for a year and a half almost. And initially it was like a match. One of the aunts who was like a mutual, she set up this date for them and eventually they started seeing each other and they decided to get married. Now after their wedding, they decided to go to South Africa for their honeymoon. The first 4 days they spent in Kruger National Park. Now on 12th of November 2010, they arrived at Cape Town International Airport. They took a taxi, that is Volkswagen Charan minivan. The driver's name is Zola Tongo. Now the reason why I'm specifying and telling you guys about the driver's name is because this driver plays a very important role in this case. So anyways, by the time Zola Tongo, the driver of this taxi, dropped the Dewanis at the Cape Grace Hotel, which is like one of the most expensive hotels of Cape Town, the Dewanis hired him to be their driver and also their tour guide for the rest of their honeymoon. Now, it was scheduled that Zola Tongo would be arriving at 7:30 p.m. the next day, that is on 13th of November, and he would pick them up and take them to a restaurant, again a very bougie restaurant, so that the newlywed couples could, have some nice food. So as scheduled, on 13th of November, around 7:30 p.m. in the evening, Zola Tongo came in. He picked them up. Now, what happened is that halfway through, the couple decided that they did not want it to have a very heavy meal and they just wanted to have something very light and fun and Asian. And Zola Tongo offered that he knew the exact place that would, suit all of these criteria. So what he did was, he drove the newlywed Dewani couples to the Surfside restaurant. Now, this restaurant was 30-minute drive from Cape Town in a very small town named Strand. Now, they did not spend a lot of time over there. I mean, if you look at the pictures, they were definitely not dressed for the place. I mean, they were dressed for the nines and this place was much more relaxed and even cheap for them. So anyways, by 10:15 p.m., they were back in the minivan on the way to Cape Town. But instead of going back to the Cape Grace Hotel, they took a turn. Now, just before the airport, there was a turn to a township named Guguletu, and that is exactly where they took this turn. So what happens next is that they stop at this intersection, which is just beside a church and a primary school. And all of a sudden, Shriyan Dewani notices that there's this man who has a pistol in his hand and he was literally hammering on the windshield. And then there was this another man who was at the driver's side and he opens the door and he shows Zola Tongo to the passenger seat in the front and he got behind the wheels. And the second man with the pistol got on the back seat. So yes, they were hijacked. Now what happens next is that the hijacker starts driving the car and they stop at a gas station and they push out Zola Tongo out of the car. Now after that, they drove another 10 minutes and they stopped the car again at the side of the road, and this time they started screaming at Shriyan Dewani. They were talking in African and then they would switch to English and scream, "Get out, get out." So he knew that they were asking, not asking but forcing him to get out of the car. He begged them to let his wife go as well, but they said, you know what, we're gonna leave you guys, but we're not gonna let you go together, so we're gonna drop her off separately. And he had no other option but to get out of the car and just stand by the road while he watched his wife in the back seat of the minivan with one of the armed hijackers. Now after that, what happens is that Anni Dewani started looking for any sort of help or any sort of source through which he could connect or contact the police. Because he did not have his phone, the hijackers took all of their expensive stuffs. Now fortunately, he met a bystander who helped him contact the police, and around 12:20 a.m. the police started looking for Anni Dewani. Now meanwhile, back in Sweden, Vinod Hindocha, Anni Dewani's father, he was informed that his daughter was kidnapped. So obviously the entire family was very confused and scared, but at the same time they had a hope. They thought that since she was kidnapped, the kidnappers would ask for some ransom money and they were ready to pay any amount to get her back. So they had this plan that Vinod would go to Cape Town and he would pay the ransom money and get his daughter back and everything would go back to normal. But that did not happen. Next day around 7:50 a.m., the investigators, they received a phone call. So one of the residents of this township, they called the police and they informed them that there was a dead body of a female on the back seat of a Volkswagen Chiron minivan. Now the police arrived at the scene and immediately they recognized this female as Anni Dewani. Now immediately her body was taken for postmortem, and according to the postmortem report, she died from a single shot. So this bullet actually first grazed her thumb and then went through her neck. And within few seconds, she died. Also, according to the postmortem report, there was no sign of sexual assault or rape. This is a very important point to be remembered over here. The postmortem report also showed that there were bruise marks on her inner legs. So there were these 5 finger marks, which showed that there was some sort of physical struggle that happened. Eventually, on 17th of November 2010, the South African authorities released her body for the family to take it back to UK so that they could do her funeral. Her funeral was done according to Hindu rituals, and her ashes were scattered in one of her favorite places in the entire world, and that is Vanern Lake, which is like very close to her hometown. So anyways, the case went to the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigation, also commonly known as the Hawks in South Africa. Now, the Hawks, like the name suggests, they deal with, high-profile cases like corruption, terrorism, narcotics, and stuff like that. And since Cape Town's economy relied hugely on tourism, and this case revolved around a tourist woman who came for honeymoon and she got murdered, the case was handed over to the Hawks. Also, the fact that they were millionaires did help. Now, very soon into the investigation, the investigators were able to retrieve fingerprints from the minivan. And these fingerprints matched with a man named Jolile Mangani or Kolile Mangani. I'm sorry if I messed it up. So anyways, Mangani was arrested on 16th of November 2010. So he was charged with murder, robbery with aggravating circumstances, and kidnapping. Now, immediately after his arrest, he confessed of his involvement in the murder of Anni Dewani. He also told the investigators that he had an accomplice. Now, he initially said that his accomplice's name was Moveve. Now, after which, when the investigators started looking for this guy named Moveve, they realized that this was actually a fake name. So yes, Mangani was lying. He was trying to misdirect the entire investigation. Now, after some time, we would find out that the real accomplice's name was Mazivama Dauda Lennox Kwabe. Now, Kwabe was Mangani's neighbor and he was also the hijacker. As soon as he was arrested, he too himself confessed of his involvement in the murder of Anni Dewani. He also gave in more information. Now, after this information was given, a warrant was issued for their third suspect, for the third perpetrator over here, and that was the driver Zola Tongo. Yes. So apparently, Zola Tongo was also involved in all of this hijacking, kidnapping, murder, and robbery. Now, Zola Tongo's information was unknown. Nobody knew where he was, but very soon he actually surrendered himself. And when he did, he agreed to enter a plea bargain and lenient sentence in exchange for information. Now, on 7th of December 2010, Zola Tongo was taken to the Western Cape High Court. Now, over there, Anni Dewani's family, his father Vinod Hindocha, was also present. Now, Vinod Hindocha later on in an interview said that his legal team had warned him that there would be some information, that there would be some news which would break out in the court that would literally shock everyone. And it did. The information that came out from the prosecutor's mouth literally vacuumed everybody's soul out of their body. And these were the exact words of Zola Tongo's prosecutor. The alleged hijacking was in fact not a hijacking, but part of a plan of subterfuge. The deceased was murdered at the instance of her husband, Anni Dewani. Mic drop. I think that not a lot of people were suspecting Anni Dewani to be in all of this. I mean, yeah, there were few people, especially the residents of the township, they had a suspicion that from the very beginning something was just not matching up, that something was just not syncing. But anyways, for Vinod Hindocha, he from the very beginning never doubted his son-in-law. And at that moment in the court when Zola Tongo's prosecutor said this all out, he was really shocked. So anyways, what happened according to Zola Tongo is that as soon as he picked them up from the Cape Town International Airport and took them to Cape Grace Hotel, Anni Dewani cornered him and confided to him that he was looking for a man who could take someone off the scene. This was the exact same words that he had used. Also, he was ready to pay 15,000 rands, which is roughly like 2,200 US dollars at the time. Now, Zola Tongo, when he heard this, he was shocked, but he also told Anni Dewani that though he has never done this and he doesn't know anybody who can do it, but he definitely knows someone who might know someone who can do it. So after having this conversation with Anni Dewani, he immediately drove to another hotel where his friend was working. His friend was Monde Mobolombo. Now, Monde Mobolombo, he became the middleman of this entire murder. So he, exactly like Zola Tongo said, he was the kind of guy who knew who can do a murder, who was a hitman basically. Now, Mobolombo immediately contacted Kwabe and told him about all of these things. And Kwabe was the one who kind of invited Mangeni to take part in all of this hijacking/murder. Now, all of this was planned within 24 hours. The very next day, Zola Tongo came again to the hotel, not this time at 7:30 p.m. as it was scheduled, but in the afternoon. Now, this time he picked only Anni Dewani and Anni was inside her hotel room. Now, he took Anni Dewani to a black market so that Anni Dewani could exchange the money. Now, Anni Dewani in his favor says that the reason why he went to this black market was because he was getting favorable rates. I mean, he was a millionaire, he had a lot of money and the rates were not really that favorable. I mean, he was just saving a couple of bucks. But anyways, Zola Tongo says that the real reason why they went to black market was so that they could buy some extra time and plan this entire thing out. They had also planned that when they would get hijacked, the hijackers would eject Zola Tongo and consecutively Anni Dewani out of the car and then they would commit the murder. Now, after all of this, the investigators extracted a confession from Kwabe which corroborated with Zola Tongo's. Now, Kwabe added that after they ejected Anni Dewani and Zola Tongo, Kwabe was the one who was driving the car and Mangeni was on the passenger seat in the front. And while he was driving the car, Mangeni, for some reason, shot Anni Dewani and they had to stop the car by the side of the road. They got out of the car and they threw the cartridge down a storm drain and they gave the gun to one of their friends for safekeeping. Now, roughly 6 hours later, when this news broke out about Anni Dewani being a suspect in Britain, a warrant was issued and Anni Dewani on 7th of December 2010 surrendered around 10:38 p.m. Now, after this, there was a huge extradition process that had to be taken. Now, after spending 2 days in prison, he was released on a very expensive bond. Now, according to the South African police, the Hawks, they had the entire case sorted out. They apparently had evidences. Now, Zola Tongo, while he was giving out his version of the story, he also said that when he was driving them back from the Surfside restaurant, he had sent Anni Dewani a text message asking him about the money, that is the 15,000 rands. To which Anni Dewani replied saying that the money was in an envelope in a pouch behind the front seat. Now, according to the investigators, they had the evidence which showed that these texts did happen, that Zola Tongo did text Shrien Dewani while he was driving them back from the Surfside restaurant. They also had a CCTV footage from 3 days after the murder. Now, in this CCTV footage, we can see that Shrien Dewani was in the lobby of the Cape Grace Hotel with his father-in-law Vinod Hindocha, and that is when he receives a phone call, after which he gets up and he goes and meets Zola Tongo. Now, over here, we can see that Shrien Dewani has some kind of white package in his hand, and they enter an activity room of the hotel. Now, when Shrien Dewani walks out from the hotel room, we see no package in his hand. And when Zola Tongo comes out of the hotel room, there's no package in his hand as well. But what happens is that after this, Zola Tongo goes to a washroom. And when he walks out of the washroom, we see the white package. According to the South African authorities, in that white package was 1,000 rands, which can be said that it was his commission or his share of the entire activity. Now, the most incriminating element of all of this was the assertion of the South African authorities that Anni Dewani was neither raped nor was there any sign of sexual assault. So the context over here was basically that when Anni Dewani was separated from her husband, see, in most of these cases, when such separation happens, it happens because the criminals, the culprits, they have rape or sexual assault in their head. But over here, none of that happened. So why? So they questioned that what reason the gunman have had to separate the couple if not pre-planned murder. Now, after this, the South African police claimed that they had everything. They had 3 culprits who were in their custody. The 4th one was in UK, and they had to just go through the entire extradition process to get him back in South Africa to trial him and convict him. But the only thing that they were missing was the motive. Now, very soon later, the South African authorities claimed that they had this information from a source that Shrien Dewani was gay. And the reason why he committed the murder or planned this entire murder of his newly wedded bride was because he wanted to get rid of her. He wanted a way out of this marriage. Or there could be a possibility that Anni Dewani found out that he was gay and she was going to tell everybody about this so that she could break this marriage, and he did not want his secret to be out, and that is why he decided to murder his wife Anni Dewani. Now, this source we would later find out was the German master or Leopold Lysor. Now, Leopold Lysor claimed that just before Shrien Dewani's wedding, he had paid him for personal sessions where they would do things, and he was into submission, like he was a submissive. He also said that Shrien Dewani was part of various gay clubs around UK, and he was also on various gay dating sites. He said that in one of his sessions with him just before the wedding, Shrien Dewani confided in him that he was actually seeing this girl who was really lovely and nice, but the thing is that he does not want to get married to her, but he can't even break the proposal of marriage because then his family would disown him. But then he added that he needed to find a way out. Now, all of this was definitely not working for Shrien Dewani. His brother actually went to the media and told that all of these allegations was false and they had no idea who this German master was, and neither was Shrien Dewani homosexual. Now, there were several other unrelated incidents that in retrospect appeared ominous. Now, for instance, the text messages that Anni Dewani sent to her sister and to her cousin. Now, one of her texts read, "Thrown off the ring, not marrying him." The other one said, "He's controlling, I can't stand him." The sister remembered that just before the wedding, Annie confided to her that she did not want to get married. She was really regretting the entire engagement and she wanted to break it off. But then her sister thought that these might be just, common pre-wedding jitters. So she told her that it's going to be fine. And, even if the marriage does not work, she can always go and get a divorce. And the sister really regrets telling her all of this. Anyways, these were the text messages that she had sent before the wedding. After the wedding, while she was in Kruger National Park for her honeymoon, she sent a message which said that crying is my new hobby. Now, pre-wedding jitters can be a possibility, but the fact that she was really crying a lot and said that it is her new hobby was definitely shady, and it raised so many red flags. I mean, we know that something was not good and she was not happy. There was something that was just not sitting right with her or with the newlywed couple. Then there were other moments as well. Now there's this incident that the father Vinod Hindocha finds completely disgustingly inappropriate. He remembers that the night before the funeral, Sri Dewani threw a pizza party for his friends and family. I mean, see, I know some people might say that, people have different ways of dealing with grief, but it's just not right. I mean, it's just weird, strange. Then he did not even allow the family to get involved, like much involved in her funeral. So according to Hindu rituals, a woman who is married, when she dies on the day of her funeral, she is dressed up completely like a bride, with the makeup, the jewelry, the entire dress and everything. But Sri Dewani would not let anyone of the Anni's family to even touch her. Anni's sister remembers that while she was trying to put on some bangles on Anni, Sri Dewani literally snatched Anni's hand and harshly dropped it down. It was really disrespectful of him to do that. Also, he did not even allow Anni's sister to talk in the funeral. And this is definitely not a way one behaves or deals with situations on the day of their loved one's funeral. Then there were these questions which people wanted Sri Dewani to answer. Like, Sri Dewani from the very beginning was described as someone who was very controlling, he had plans for everything, he had everything sorted out. I mean, he was the kind of a guy who literally booked a private jet to take his girlfriend from London to Paris so that he could propose to her for marriage. And over here, when they come for their honeymoon, instead of taking the luxurious service car, which was provided by their hotel, he took a minivan. He took a Volkswagen minivan. But then again, it's not a point that could be pinpointed and said, this shows that he murdered his wife. And then the question comes that why would they go to a township in the middle of night? I mean, even a naive tourist knows that there are some regions, that there are some parts of a city that one should not go after the sun sets. Every city has a good side and the bad side. I live in Bombay. I know that there are places that I could go even after midnight, all alone by myself, and I would feel completely comfortable and safe. And then there are places in Bombay that I wouldn't even dare to think of going out in daylight. So it just doesn't make sense. Like, why would they go to this place, to this township? Now, this township, by the way, is so violent. The stats are so high. I mean, it's 140 murders every year. So that meant one murder every 2 days or so. Now, according to Sri Dewani, the reason why they went to township was because Anni wanted to see the real Africa. So according to Sri, since Anni was born and brought up in a very privileged and, comfortable and a safe environment in Sweden, when she came to South Africa, she wanted to see the real Africa. She was living in Cape Grace. The entire neighborhood was clean and pristine and, civilized, some might even say. So she was not really satisfied with that, and she wanted to explore more and see the real Africa, at least the stereotypical Africa. So that is the reason why she asked Zola Tongo to take them to the township. But then again, why didn't Zola Tongo stop them? I mean, he was the resident of this place. He would know that this was definitely a no-no place for any tourist or for anyone, for any outsider to go there in the middle of night. And even the husband, why would Sri Dewani allow her to do that? They could have gone out in the daylight as well. Now, after this, the point comes that the bystander and also the first responders, they noticed that Sri Dewani looked completely fine, like he had no visual injuries. Also, he had stated initially that he was thrown out from the car, like through the door, but then later he changed his statement that he was pushed out from the car's window. So if we follow what he's saying, then it doesn't make sense, because he was definitely not looking like a man who had been thrown out from a car's window. His clothes were proper, it wasn't distorted, neither torn nor filthy, and he definitely did not look like a guy who had gone through something very traumatic and violent like he claims he did. Vinod Hindocha, the father of Anni, also remembers that in his last phone call, Anni wanted to tell him about something. She said that there's something very important that she has to share with him, but she can't do it over a telephone call. So she will do it when she comes back home. And she never did. Now, anyways, on 20th of Feb 2011, Shrien Dewani overdosed on sleeping pills which he was prescribed, and he was also diagnosed of severe depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, the defense attorney used these points and said that if Shrien Dewani is sent back to South Africa, then he would likely commit suicide. But anyways, on September of 2011, the British Home Secretary ordered Shrien Dewani to be extradited to South Africa, to which the defense attorney appealed, and 6 months later, they put a temporary block on the extradition because Shrien Dewani was severely mentally ill. But they also ordered that he should be extradited as soon as he was fit. Anni Dewani's family also petitioned and appealed to the court for this temporary block to be removed and for Shrien Dewani to be sent to South Africa so that he could give everyone the answers. And the entire extradition took more than 3 years. In 2014, finally, Shrien Dewani was extradited to South Africa after a court's order. Now, the prosecutor's entire case was based on the fact of the motive that Shrien Dewani was gay. But what happens is that when Shrien Dewani goes to the court and stands on trial, he immediately gave out the statement that he was bisexual. Now, this was a master plan from the defense attorney's side because now the prosecutors basically had nothing. All they were left was with circumstantial evidences and compromised witnesses. Now, the reason why I'm saying that the witnesses were compromised was because from the very beginning, all of these witnesses, be it Mngeni, Kwabe, Zolatongo, or the middleman Mobolombo, they were lying. They lied in the very beginning, and they also changed their statements so many times and were giving contradictory statements. Most of the times, their versions did not even relate or corroborate with each other's. In fact, Mobolombo also confessed of perjury. He confessed that he had lied whilst testifying, but even after all of this, he was given full immunity. He had no charges, there was no sentencing, no punishment for him because he agreed and he promised the court that he would give a truthful testimony against Shrien Dewani. I mean, that's a different thing if Shrien Dewani is innocent or not, but the fact that someone literally lied in front of the court and tried to misdirect the entire investigation and still they were not prosecuted did not make sense. Also, the fact that he was the middleman. He was the one who connected Kwabe and Zolatongo, and yet he was let to walk out free. I mean, it doesn't matter really who in the end of the day pulled the trigger. They were all planning a murder. And with Kwabe and Mngeni, when they were arrested, in their initial statements, they said that Anni Dewani and Shrien Dewani both were victims. And they never really said that Anni Dewani was the only victim and Shrien Dewani was the main perpetrator, the one who hired them to murder his wife. And eventually, they completely changed their statements. In fact, Mngeni, who had confessed, and this was all videotaped, even after his videotaped confession, he said that he was tortured by the investigators to extract a confession and to accept that he was one of the people behind the murder. He said that he has an alibi and he is nowhere related in all of this. He also gave out a fake name in the very beginning of the investigation. Zolatongo himself was a liar. Even all of this, the prosecutor were trying to convict Shrien Dewani for the murder of his wife Anni Dewani. Now, apart from this, both Mngeni and Kwabe's version of the story did not match at all. For instance, according to Kwabe, he was the one who was driving the car, Mngeni was in the passenger seat in the front, and he was the one who shot Anni Dewani. But according to forensic experts, it is not possible. So there was some gun residue that were found on her skin, and that is only possible if the weapon, if the pistol was in contact with her skin. And if we go through the physics and everything, it is not possible for someone sitting in the front seat to get in direct contact with the gun with the victim over here. So the only way that was possible was if the hijacker who shot Anni Dewani was in the back seat. And this theory corroborated with Mngeni. So according to Mngeni, he was driving the car and Kwabe was the one who was on the back seat and he was the one who shot Anni Dewani. Now, apart from this, there were also various other questions, as in how is it possible for someone to plan an entire murder within a day, within 24 hours? Also, the fact that Shrien Dewani was alien, was a foreigner to the city, and how could he approach the very first man he saw in the city to murder his wife? How did he know if he could trust him? I mean, no sane person would do that. I mean, there's a lot of risk. What if this person would go to the police and tell them that some XYZ guy is asking me to murder someone? It's really risky. Also, the fact that Zola Tongo just agreed to commit a murder when a stranger approached him for an amount of money which was lesser than his 1 month's income, it just did not make sense. So, seeing all of this, the judge decided to acquit Anni Dewani of all the charges and to throw the case out of the window. The judge said that the prosecution's evidences were far below the threshold, and the testimony of the witnesses were riddled with contradiction. So yes, like I was saying, the prosecution put up a very weak case. The evidences against Anni Dewani were too circumstantial, witnesses were too compromised, and the motive was too elusive to prove. And all of this resulted in Anni Dewani being acquitted of all the charges of murdering his wife Anni Dewani. Now, very recently, Anni's family requested for coroner's inquest, but it was declined because of insufficient cause. Now, here we come to the end of this video. And the thing is that, yes, I agree, there are a lot of things happening. In Hindi, we call it khichdi. So, there's one side which really makes you question, like, would a man like Anni Dewani, would he literally make such a huge mistake of going to a township with a strange driver? It just doesn't make sense. And then the white package. Why would he give Zola Tongo the white package so secretly, like so privately? So Anni Dewani reasons that in the white package was the amount that he had to pay Zola Tongo for being his driver. He trusted him initially, like way before his warrant was issued. He trusted him. He thought that, he was a poor man and he had to be paid. So he did that. But then the question comes like, why would he do it so secretly? Like, he could have just given him out there in the lobby. Why take him to the activity room? Then the text messages that were exchanged. So later on, we would find out that though the investigators had evidence that there were some text messages that were exchanged between Zola Tongo and Anni Dewani while they were on the highway, but they never really had the context of it, like the content of the message. So we don't really know what exactly they were talking about. But even if even if we don't know the content of the text messages, it definitely is shady. I mean, you guys are in the same car. Zola Tongo is driving the car and he shouldn't be really texting. And if there's anything normal, if there's nothing really shady, then why didn't they just speak it out loud? Why were they texting when Annie was sitting right beside them? And the only reason could be because they did not wanted whatever conversation they were having for Annie to hear. Now, Anni Dewani says that he was actually planning a surprise helicopter trip for Annie, but it doesn't make sense. Like, why would he talk about the surprise helicopter trip with the driver? He should speak with the hotel people. So yeah, there's like a lot of things, but at the same time, the questions like, is it really possible for someone to plan out an entire murder in a strange city within 24 hours? Like, there's so many things that does not add up. I mean, I don't know, some days I feel like Shane did it, some days I'm like, no, he did not. I mean, only because he's gay and only because he kept it secret from Annie and the rest of the family does not mean that he's capable of murdering people. In various cultures, still people from LGBTQA community are not so accepted. So yes, a lot of people do hide, but it does not mean that they can do this. At the same time, I'm not saying that there's not a possibility, but we can't base the entire murder case on just that point. So anyways, here we come to the end of this video. I would love to know your opinions, your views on it. Do you think Anni Dewani was murdered by her own husband, or do you think it was hijacking? Now, there is this one theory that I would like to mention. So according to this theory, Anni Dewani was not really involved in the murder. And what exactly happened was that Zola Tongo, he saw these people. He saw that they were millionaires, they were really rich, and he wanted to get money. He wanted to rob them. So he planned all of this hijacking, and they had initially planned to probably rape or sexually assault Annie, and that is the reason why they separated her from the husband by ejecting Shriyan out of the car. But when they were trying to do that, something happened and they were not really planning to shoot her, but they did. And that is the reason why there's this gun residue found on her body. Now, this is a possibility. I feel like it can happen. I mean, yeah, because it kind of matches with everything. But I don't know. I would love to know your views on it. Put them in the comment section. If you have any suggestion, do that as well. And that's all for the day. I hope you guys found this video informative. If you did, then hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It keeps me motivated. And most importantly, take care of yourself. Be happy, be safe, and bye-bye.